The small, bustling restaurant was alive with the sound of clinking plates and quiet conversations. But at one table, a husband and wife sat staring at their menus, their hands trembling slightly. The waitress, Sarah, approached with a warm smile. "Can I take your order?" she asked. The husband exchanged a hesitant glance with his wife before speaking. We would like your 2 cheapest meals, please," he said softly. Sarah paused, sensing the struggle behind those words. "Are you sure? I can recommend." "No," the wife interrupted, forcing a smile. We are going through a tough time." Sarah felt her chest tighten. She could see it, the exhaustion in their eyes, the way the man's fingers clutched his wallet like it was his last hope. And at that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. Before we go any further, subscribe to the channel and comment below where you are watching from. For our returning subscribers, thank you so much for your unwavering support. It truly means a lot to our community. Sarah had been a waitress for years, but she had never seen a couple like this. They weren't just hungry for food. They were hungry for kindness, for relief, for something to hold on to. Their clothes were neat, but worn. Their voices were steady, but held quiet desperation. And their eyes? They carried the weight of struggle. Sarah had been taught to serve without question. But today, she couldn't just serve a meal and walk away. So she made a choice. One that would change her life forever. Sarah took their order, but instead of inputting the cheapest meals, she did something else. She walked into the kitchen and told the chef, "Make 2 of our best dishes, and add dessert." The chef raised an eyebrow. "That's not what they ordered." "I know," Sarah said, pulling out her own wallet. "I'm paying for it." The chef's expression softened, but he said nothing. Minutes later, Sarah walked back out, carrying 2 beautifully plated meals. The couple's eyes widened. We didn't order this," the man stammered. Sarah smiled gently. "It's my treat," she said simply. The wife's eyes shimmered with tears as she whispered, "Why would you do this?" Sarah simply shrugged. "Because sometimes kindness is the only thing that keeps us going." Sarah walked back to the counter, watching as the couple slowly ate almost in disbelief. But what nobody knew was that Sarah was struggling too. She had been saving every extra dollar for over a year. When the couple finished their meal, they called Sarah over, asking for the bill. She walked up with a small folded paper and placed it in front of them. The husband unfolded it, expecting a number. But instead, he read, "I have covered your meal from my own pocket. Please accept this $100 as well. I know times are tough, but I hope this helps in some small way, Sarah." The wife covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The husband's hands trembled as he clutched the note. We don't know how to thank you," he whispered. Sarah simply smiled. "Just pay it forward when you can," she said. She watched them leave with their heads held a little higher. And even though her savings were lighter, her heart had never felt fuller. Sarah's sacrifice. A decision that cost her, but she had no regrets. That night, Sarah sat on her bed, staring at the dim light flickering from her bedside lamp. She knew she had made a sacrifice, but strangely, she felt at peace. She wasn't worried. She wasn't angry at herself. In fact, she was calm, because for the first time in a long while, she felt like she had done something that truly mattered. Sarah had spent months saving every extra dollar she earned. Not for something extravagant, not for something others would consider a luxury, but for a new pair of hearing aids for her father. Her dad, Greg, had been struggling with his hearing for years, and though he never complained, Sarah saw how much it affected him. He struggled to hear conversations at family dinners. He had to ask people to repeat themselves constantly. He had started withdrawing from social gatherings because it was too exhausting. His old hearing aids barely worked anymore. Sarah had promised herself she would help him, but today, that promise had been put on hold, because she had chosen to help someone else instead. And even though it meant waiting longer for her father's hearing aids, she did not regret it, because in that moment, she had eased someone else's burden. And that was worth more than money. Mia's disapproval. "You always do this." Later that night, Sarah met her best friend Mia at their favorite cafe. She knew exactly what was coming, and she wasn't wrong. As soon as Sarah told her what she had done, Mia's jaw dropped. "Tell me you didn't use the savings." Sarah gave her a small, guilty smile. Mia's face fell into her hands. "Sarah," she groaned, "that was for your dad. What if he needs them sooner?" Sarah sighed, stirring her coffee. "I know, Mia, but it felt right. They needed help more than I did in that moment." Mia leaned forward, exasperated. "You always do this. You always put everyone else first. But what about you? What about your family?" Sarah met her friend's eyes, unshaken. "Mia, it's okay. Dad can wait a little longer. But that couple, they were starving. They were struggling. I couldn't just walk away." Mia crossed her arms, shaking her head. "One day, Sarah, you're going to help the wrong person and end up with nothing." Sarah just smiled softly. "Maybe. But today, I know I made a difference." Sarah had no idea that her act of kindness was about to take her life in a direction she never imagined. The couple she had helped? They weren't just struggling customers. The husband was actually Daniel Carter, the CEO of one of the biggest cafe chains in the country, Carter and Company Coffee. With over 500 branches nationwide, his company was one of the leading names in the industry. And that day, he wasn't just there for coffee. He was there to observe his staff undercover, see how they treated customers when they thought no one was watching. What Sarah had done had shocked him to his core. She didn't just offer basic service. She didn't just do her job. She went above and beyond, even when it cost her. And Daniel Carter knew exactly what he had to do next. The next morning, Sarah's manager rushed over to her during the early shift. "Sarah, the owner wants to see you in his office, right now." Sarah's stomach flipped. "Wait, the owner? Like the owner?" Her manager nodded excitedly. "Yes, he's here right now, and he asked for you personally." Sarah's mind raced. Did she do something wrong? Was she about to get fired? She had no idea what to expect, but she had no choice but to go find out. When Sarah stepped into the office, she froze. Sitting behind the huge wooden desk was the man from last night, the same man she had helped. And now, he was looking at her with an approving smile. You're the customer from last night," she gasped. Daniel nodded. "Yes, Sarah, and I'm also the CEO of Carter and Company Coffee." Sarah felt her breath catch. This could not be real. But before she could say anything else, Daniel stood up and smiled. "I came in yesterday to test how my staff treats customers. I wanted to see their kindness, their patience, their ability to go the extra mile. And you, Sarah, you passed that test better than I ever imagined." Sarah's heart pounded. "But I wasn't trying to pass a test," she whispered. Daniel chuckled. "Exactly. That's what makes you different." Then he did something Sarah never expected. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an offer letter. "Sarah, I don't think you belong behind a counter as a waitress anymore," Daniel said. "I want to offer you a management position at our corporate office, effective immediately." Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. "Wait, you mean like a corporate job in your company?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, you have what money can't buy, Hart, and I want you to be part of something bigger." But that wasn't all. Daniel slid an envelope across the table. "Also, I heard from someone that you were saving money for a personal reason. Consider this my way of giving it back to you, with a little extra." Sarah hesitated before opening it. Inside, a check for $50,000. Sarah gasped. I can't accept this," she stammered. Daniel shook his head. "You can, and you should. This is not just a reward, it's an investment in you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. In just 24 hours, her life had completely transformed. Sarah could barely process what was happening. One moment, she was a struggling waitress. The next, she had a high-paying corporate job, a $50,000 check, and the respect of an entire industry. But the surprises were far from over. Within hours of accepting her new role, Sarah's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Her name was trending on Twitter. News anchors were calling her a symbol of kindness. Major companies were reaching out, wanting to offer her even more. She finally opened the video that had gone viral. It had been posted by a diner customer and was titled, "Waitress pays for couple's meal. What happens next will shock you." The video showed Sarah sneaking into the kitchen to pay for the meal. Her note, where she left the couple an extra $100. The emotional reaction of the couple as they read her words. And the comments? "This is the kind of world I want to live in. I've watched this 5 times and cried every time. Why isn't Sarah running the whole company yet?" Sarah was stunned. This wasn't just local news anymore. This was global. Just when Sarah thought things couldn't get crazier, her manager rushed in, holding her phone up excitedly. "Sarah, you need to take this call." Sarah frowned, confused. "Who is it?" Her manager beamed. "The producers of Good Morning America. They want to fly you out for an interview." Sarah's jaw dropped. Good Morning America? One of the biggest television shows in the country? This was surreal. With shaking hands, she took the phone. "Hello?" she said nervously. The voice on the other end was warm and enthusiastic. "Sarah, we love your story. Would you be willing to come on air and share it with our viewers?" Sarah hesitated. She wasn't used to all this attention. But then she remembered something. She had spent her whole life putting others first. Maybe now? It was her time. So she took a deep breath and said, "Yes, I'd love to." The next morning, Sarah found herself on a flight to New York City. She barely had time to process it before she was seated under bright studio lights, staring at a camera. The host smiled at her. "Sarah, you've inspired millions. Tell us, why did you help that couple?" Sarah paused, then spoke from the heart. "Because I know what it feels like to struggle, and I believe kindness is the only thing that can truly change the world." The audience applauded, clearly moved. Then the host grinned. "Sarah, before we let you go, we have a little surprise for you." Sarah's stomach flipped. "A surprise?" The host nodded. "Roll the clip." The screen behind her lit up, and Sarah gasped, because appearing on the screen was her father, and next to him, a brand new pair of hearing aids. Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes as her father's voice came through the speakers. "Sarah, I love you, and thanks to the generosity of people who were moved by your kindness, I can finally hear again." Sarah covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "Oh my God," she whispered. The host smiled. "That's not all. A generous donor has also gifted you an additional $100,000 to continue spreading kindness wherever you go." Sarah burst into tears. She had given everything without expecting anything in return. And now, she was being rewarded beyond her wildest dreams. After the show, Sarah's world completely transformed. She officially started her corporate job at Carter and Company. She became a speaker, sharing her message of kindness. She used her money to help struggling families just like she once was. And the best part? She never had to struggle again. Because sometimes, a single act of kindness can change your entire life. So, if you believe in the power of good, remember, kindness costs nothing but means everything. Who knows? Your next act of compassion might just change the world.